work of Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro will be given by Charles Renfro. And I want to both introduce as well as thank Charles for flying across the country and so graciously stepping in on behalf of Liz Diller, who is unable to join us this evening. This evening's lecture is a special event in conjunction with the opening of the SF MoMA exhibition, When Wine Became Modern. And I'd also like to thank Douglas Burnham, a professor at CCA and also chair of the A&D Forum, and welcome to all of you from the A&D Forum from SF MoMA, and also Henry Urbach, chair for architecture and design at the SF MoMA, for helping to make this event possible tonight. Charles Renfro joined the studio of Diller and Scofidio in 1997 and became a partner in 2004 when the firm's name was changed to Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro. The firm, located in New York City, is a unique interdisciplinary studio that has a history of integrating architecture with the performing and visual arts. Having continuously challenged and expanded the edges of the traditional architectural practice, the studio was known early on for its radical performative posture, as evident in projects such as Parasite, commissioned for the Museum of Modern Art in 1989, tourism suitcase studies at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, and Soft Cell in 1993, which featured a pair of oversized red lipstick lips projected onto the glass surface of New York City's Rialto Theater. And the lips uttered phrases such as, "Wanna buy a new lifestyle?" to people that walked by. These and other works, such as Bad Press, which through the origami of misironed men's shirts presented a commentary on the monotony of women's work and the creativity inherent in exploiting the inefficiencies of repetitive household work. Locating architecture somewhere between installation art and performance, conflating artifacts with highly conceptual events that focused more on the potency of the architectural in making worlds evident than on the production of typical buildings. Theirs had always been a practice of defamiliarization, where the denaturalizing of seemingly invisible social structures and everyday acts and objects get played out within a highly orchestrated architecture of display. The shift in their work from performative architectures such as the atmospheric Blur building created for the Swiss Expo of 2002, a building that was constructed entirely of mechanically produced fog, to architectures for performance and art, as the redevelopment of things like the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, Boston's Institute of Contemporary Art completed in 2006, their invited competition entry for the I-Beam Museum of Art and Technology, and their more recent commissions for the Creative Art Center for Brown University, the Broad Art Museum in Los Angeles, and of course the new Berkeley Art Museum here in the Bay Area. Suggests perhaps a thematic continuity in their practice, yet one that is highly transformed when the orchestration of display gets spatialized and materialized in more permanent practices of building. What is extremely consistent in their work, however, across all scales and modes of architectural performance, is the exquisite care and precision, the ironic intelligence, and the innovation that is absolutely pervasive in their work. Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro have received numerous prestigious awards, including the AIA President's Award and Medal of Honor, the National Design Award from the Smithsonian, and the Brunner Prize from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. Our lecturer this evening, Charles Renfro, received his professional architecture degree from Rice University, his master's degree in advanced architectural design from Columbia University, and is currently a visiting professor at Parsons New School for Design. I am thrilled that Charles was able to be with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Charles Renfro.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, never mind. I was going to put my prop up here. I mean, we're super thrilled to be here. There are many occasions for our visit here, one of which is the opening of the Design of Wine at or how Wine Became Modern at San Francisco MoMA, which is opening tomorrow, and we're very excited about that. It gives us a lot of opportunities to imbibe and have that become, that's part of our professional requirement, which is very exciting, and it grounds us to the Bay Area somehow. I am not Elizabeth Diller. I know that we have similarities, and I want to make sure you aren't confused. I'm actually me, Charles Renfro. That's a few years ago. I make up one of the three partners of Dillers, Cofidio, and Renfro. As you just heard, a lot of our practice is founded on one simple act, and that is the act of looking. That's informed a lot of our work, both inside cultural institutions like museums, but now more or increasingly it's informing the way that we actually make the institutions themselves, as our practice is shifting from making things that are contained to making the containers themselves. Looking for us is not simply about vision. It's not simply about seeing. It's about looking and understanding what you're looking at. We take inspiration in the everyday, and our practice spans many scales, from vice virtue, which is a set of drinking glasses you see here, that deal with the problem of virtue of a water glass, and sort of inherent sort of vice that's embedded in a virtue, and each of these glasses performs a function that sort of merges and blurs the distinction between the vice and virtue. In fact, the one on the bottom right, as you push the goblet down, it emits the virtue right into the water, really confusing the two. We've made objects for production. This is a light fixture that we developed with Swarovski crystals. This comes in one lobe or two. I prefer the two-lobe version. The way this works is that you are able to purchase the crystals by the pound, like you would fish. They're collected up in these nets, and there are xenon lights inserted into the crystals, making a glow. You can purchase this if you're interested. Our work has gone to the other extreme of urban planning, both in this project for the BAM Master Plan, Brooklyn Academy of Music Master Plan, that we did with Rem Koolhaas, and it was not exactly executed, to our recently completed work up at Lincoln Center, which in fact was a master plan that involved a redevelopment of the entire campus, unbelievably so, because we won the job as sort of a media public work project that was going to be focused solely on 65th Street, which is the street you see here, and it expanded into new additions to Lincoln Center, such as the Juilliard School that you see here, a new freestanding restaurant, Lincoln, which just opened a few weeks ago, a completely renovated Robertson Plaza, which is the sort of iconic center of the center, where we stripped everything away and put it all back, refreshed and renewed, and it included additions, media additions, such as on the steps here, which have LED banners which scroll across and operate as a new sort of a new marquee for the center. It never really had a front door, and the new fountain you see in the background, which has been spritzed and spruced and lightened, and now floats off of the plaza surface. And then the canopy that you see in the right-hand side of the slide, which is supported on a single column, and is a 85-foot-long glass member or glass canopy on this single bifurcated column. Two are also recently completed and still under construction, actually, park for New York called the High Line, that was constructed on top of an old abandoned railroad that was used to deliver food to the city of New York. This is a photograph taken by Joel Sternfeld as propaganda, really, to try to sell the Giuliani administration, the former mayoral administration, to save the line, because the line it was inherently beautiful and had developed, very ironically, one of the most ecologically native sort of landscapes in New York City. That's what you see here. This is just accidental. And then our transformation of that line, elevated 30 feet above the city grid, into a public space that tried to maintain as much of the character as was existing in the accidentally overgrown ruin that the High Line was before we touched it. Again, much of our work is about looking here. There was a large section of the High Line that we cut away. It was bridging 10th Avenue, and we made what I heard a little kid refer to as the car TV, sort of theater that descends out of the surface of the High Line, and everything from marriages to plays to TV shows have been filmed in the car TV. And it's also fun just to sit there and look at the cars. Then our work has gone into areas of theater and dance. This is a still from a play called Jet Lag, which was just resurrected in Montclair, New Jersey. This is a story that we co-developed with the Builders Association about two true stories of sort of modern day life and the way technology intersects with our world these days. Both of these stories were true, and both of them were tragic, and eventually the protagonist in each story died because of or as a part of the act of mediating their lives in some way. So just thinking about looking a little bit more, I'm going to start the talk, because it hasn't really started yet. I'm going to start the talk with this installation that was done by Liz and Rick. This is before I joined the studio, so I'm gonna just bullshit and make it sound like I worked on the project. The thematic that it embodies is something we're still very, very interested in, as I said before. There's just a few slides here, but I think we were the first architects to be given the project room. This is in 1989 at MoMA, and oh, it's going by itself. Okay, and the content of the show was developed, or was in fact the museum itself, and in a way, this project is about looking. It's looking at looking. We installed series of Liz and Rick installed a series of cameras throughout the museum, sort of using current surveillance technologies, and those images were represented in this room on these monitors, playing back to the audience, the visitors being the unsuspecting subjects of the sort of provocations, prodding, and musing of the piece. So what you're seeing here are 4 monitors that show the various entrances of the MoMA. So in fact, and that's what one of the images was, a camera right in the top part of the revolving door that turned the museum going into the museum piece itself. And this concept is something that really informs a lot of our work, and I think you'll see that as we continue. So moving on to a next thought about museums and the museum wall, and again, the sort of transition of our practice from working inside the museum wall in the contained form of exhibitions to the actual wall itself. We were given a show at the Whitney in 2002, and as part of the show, we developed a piece with the Whitney called Mural, and this is a depiction of that piece. And the idea was that we would basically tear apart the temporary walls that formed the rooms of the show with this robotic drill, which would constantly and annoyingly circulate around the entire exhibition area, drilling holes throughout the 3-month tenure of the show, eventually pockmarking the wall to sort of unbelievable dimensions. This is just a little aside, parentheses. We worked with Honeybee Robotics, who is the company that developed the Mars roving driller, that's amazingly based in Little Italy in New York, and here's what the insides look like. We're always so excited. It's like an erector set for adults, you know. It's like, wow, we were able to do this crazy thing, and it just sort of gleefully drilled wherever it wanted through the wall text, and eventually the wall started to disintegrate, and it's a metaphor about the breaking down of the container and the contained, but it's also pure fun and spectacle. Within the show itself is a very special spot where that Duchamp painting once hung at the MoMA. That office was taken over by temporary offices when MoMA shut down and renovated, and so we wanted to do this sort of cheeky thing, so we dislocated a part of the wall at MoMA. You can see here the exact size of that painting, which had long since ceased from existing in that location. But here we are taking the wall, the gypsum wallboard that's on studs, off of this, out of this gallery, very carefully, lifting it out. And this becomes very long and tedious. I'm going to take a little break. Well, this is happening anyway. So this is what my wine. Okay, this is. Thank you, David, for suggesting this. This is a little wine break. Anyway, so. And what happened is the piece from MoMA got reinserted into the Whitney, the competitor in New York, and we did indeed program the drill to behave differently, to abandon its abnormal, erratic behavior when it reaches this rarefied point of wall, and it behaves. It drills in a grid. Because it's the MoMA, after all, and one needs to and this happened for the entire length of the exhibit, 3 months. We had to develop a dust collection machine as part of this drilling apparatus, and it did warn you with those little beeping sounds as it was rounding corners, etc. I would turn this off, but there is sort of a punch line, so I kind of have to wait. But see that little notch there? We had to really alter the wall to let the machine roll around. So here we are, back in the new MoMA, and this is now part of the permanent collection at the New York MoMA, not to be confused with SF MoMA, and it is the Duchamp wall that has been muraled and part of the Whitney that's now been returned back to the MoMA and reinstalled as permanent wall. Okay. You can see it here. It was painted a different color white, but other than that, it was indecipherable, indistinguishable from the rest of the wall. There it is, drilling its grid. Within that show was another exhibition apparatus, I guess, that we developed for Rolf Feldbaum, shown at the Cartier Foundation originally. Rolf has an amazing collection of toy Japanese robots, and he wanted to think about how to display them in a really interesting way, and he approached us to kind of conceive of a museum exhibition for them. And what we decided to do was to make sort of a dystopic, modernist office floor where all of the robots were, in fact, disgruntled office workers that were forced to parade themselves around all day on conveyor belts. Little cameras everywhere, were constantly taking pictures of them like they were getting drug tests or whatever. And once a day they would, see there's a camera image, once a day they would be forced to go into an X-ray machine. That's sort of what they looked like. That was fun. And then sort of leading up to, and actually sort of the precursor for the How Wine Became Modern show that we co-developed with San Francisco MoMA is a show that we developed for the Canadian Center for Architecture called the American Lawn. And here again, I mean, this is, not to put too fine a point on it, but the concept of looking and really trying to uncover the latent and hidden meanings or hidden truths, or at least some of the weirdnesses that are beneath our quotidian life. Here, the lawn, which is seemingly just a simple, benign surface of grass, maybe natural or maybe not. As we started researching this topic, it just became clear that the lawn embodied so much about American society, about technology, about control, power, beauty, collectivity, that it was irresistible. In fact, we have a whole gallery that was dedicated to the law of grass, and there were many sort of laws that were brought to court because people had their grass too long, and that neighbors that said, oh, you after 5 inches you have to cut it. That's in the deed restriction of the neighborhood. So it was really interesting, and we had a series of rooms that were co-developed with artists. These were binocular, stereoscopic images of the line, the dividing line between properties, and how the lawn gave away as much about the owner as did the house. Excuse me. And then we were looking into all of the peripheral artifacts around lawn, including these athletic shoes, each of which had developed a very particular way to attack the lawn with different cleats, etc. And we use those shoes to make a table. I'm now sort of shifting topics. The Blur building really represents the project that sort of spans the two worlds that we work in, and I would say that the two worlds really are not separated, but sort of on the surface they look to be separated. This project was developed for the Swiss Expo in 2002. It was a competition, and it was not a World's Fair, but it was more or less modeled after a World's Fair. And our basic idea was to give back to the site itself. So essentially, make a cloud out of the lake water that would be sucked up and pushed through 33,000 high-pressure fog nozzles, as if Switzerland needs another cloud. But that's what they got, and that is it in operation. It is a building, and this is why it's so interesting to think about it as spanning some of our work. It's a building, but it's shapeless, formless, edgeless. It kept changing, and was much to the consternation of the officials that ran the expo, because the tail was getting up into the other parts of the Expo Park, there were fog police that kept making us turn it down. But I mean, what provoked us to do this is, again, sort of thinking about looking, and also thinking about the history of the Expo Pavilion, which typically is about sort of technology and showcasing new technologies and showing the most high definition videos and really all about gung-ho progress. We decided, wanting to be sort of bad boys about the whole thing, to do exactly the opposite, to in fact have no new technology, to have nothing but old-fashioned water. This is the structure. Its tensegrity, which is not a new technology, but it is, I think, probably the biggest tensegrity structure that had been made at the time. On 4 columns, the surface that you can walk on, you can see there, floating up there is the size of a football field, so it's 300 feet by 100 feet deep. It goes up about 80 feet to the top of the mast in the air, and it defies description when the thing is turned on. This is at night. You're given a raincoat as you enter and walk up this ramp, slowly to be engulfed in the formless blob that is the building itself. You actually become one with the building. And you know, sort of the funny thing about the experience of being in this fog is that you realize it is about vision and about seeing, and you realize how dependent we are on vision, and how all of the world around us is constructed by and through vision, and this is simply because it's absolutely taken away from you in this morass of fog. I also wanted to say something else about the top, which is there's a deck that you can finally make your way out to called the Angel Deck, partly because it looks like angel wings, and there we had a bar, and we served nothing but water. Water from the world, bottled water and municipal water, which we thought was fun. The icon, which was sort of formless anti-icon, was iconized and depicted on all sorts of peripheral material, umbrellas and sugar packets, and our favorite bar of chocolate. You know that when you're in Switzerland and you're on a bar of chocolate, you sort of, you're at the top. Our first museum that was completed in 2006 was our first opportunity to ponder, what the nature of a museum is, and what it needs to do. And our first stop was think about recent museums that had been completed, and Bilbao and the Goethe collection were 2 extreme examples. The polite sort of vessel that doesn't challenge the art versus the expressive, exuberant behemoth that remakes a whole city. And while that seems sort of logical, bipolar argument, what we decided is that's not right for us, and we need to just go down over there somehow. Our site was it's an incredible site, which since the opening of the museum has really turned into a center of Boston. It sort of surprised everyone when Lewis moved out there last summer. I think we could all have scraped half of Boston off of the ground. But we think that part of the reason is the ICA turned everybody's eyes, got them to look actually at this abandoned derelict waterfront site, which used to be the rail yards. On Boston Harbor, gorgeous site in a way. I mean, sailboats and water and all of this stuff, and we realized very quickly that the site was really a problem. In fact, it's too strong to be on the water, to have that view, and that the role of the museum was one of introspection, of contemplation, and looking. And so we knew from the very beginning that what our museum would need to do would be to tame the site, or to edit the site, or to blur the site, but essentially to take the site and turn it into a part of the collection of the museum, to own the site, essentially. We were also very interested in the public nature of the museum, and the way that the museum could work with the water in a way that could deliver itself to all of Boston, and so that was sort of the party boat, which is sort of part of the museum, sort of leaving and going around Boston Harbor. Boston Harbor is surrounded by the Harbor Walk, publicly mandated 25-foot wide walking surface that goes for 85 miles around the harbor, and we thought, well, that's an interesting starting point to make a civic building, and we, thinking along the lines of even Blur, where we sort of evolved the building and the architecture out of the site itself, we started thinking about that harbor walk and thinking to make the civic portion of the building, which is the lower 3 floors, out of the material of the harbor walk. So pulling the wood up through and stitching, weaving the harbor walk through the wood to make a sort of forced engagement of the public with the museum. There's a gallery in the ground floor that's free and open to the public, and you can also see it through the windows. And then to let the gallery portion come from the top down. It has skylights, north lights, and it makes a very refined art viewing environment. That is the result. The cantilever, which was needed to fulfill all of the gallery area requirements in one floor, was in direct violation of the zoning code in Boston, which had just been implemented the year before. We were the first building to go to get building approval under the new zoning, and we were the first building to challenge it. But I think Boston was happy. Basically, the zoning said that any piece of architecture had to be 25 feet away from the water, so that on the harbor walk you could see the sky free and clear. And we said, why don't we do a little exchange and give Boston a new public place, and let us cover the harbor walk to the water's edge. So that's what you get. So there's a new grandstand that's made of the harbor walk, pulls up. It's become a very fun destination in the summers. Essentially, the new kind of summer party spot, Boston. The diagram is quite simple. The harbor walk pulls up into the grandstand, pulls up to form a stage, and then goes up to form the seating area of the audience, wraps the back of the theater, and then passes out through to the plaza. The theater itself also is about looking, and we made a very open theater to the view. The view can be taken in as parts of the set. In the theater, this can also be blacked out. It can accommodate many forms of theatrical productions. This is a fire stair. This museum was made fairly inexpensively, so we had to sort of work the rudimentary parts of the program into special places. Fire stair operates as the main stair, and they're just simple bent plates. But the most interesting sort of conveyance device that we gave the museum was the elevator, which is the freight elevator, but also the primary passenger elevator. It's the size of a car. It's 20 feet long by 10 feet deep, and can transport 20,000 pounds. And it's sort of a scanner. It's embedded in the very middle of the building. It has its glass front that allows you to see outside and also inside back of house programs, and then finally when it reaches the top floor, it lets you see the gallery. Kids love it. They'd rather come here than go to the Children's Museum, which is 3 blocks away. That's pretty good. And the galleries themselves are fairly simple. top lit, open, or they can be shut down with walls on the dividing lines of the ceiling system. And then at the very edge of the gallery floor is a little narrow gallery called the Founders Gallery, and this is the one that is on the water's edge. Sort of forced intimacy with the water. And this is the only place in the museum where we deliver what I would call the sort of pornographic view of the harbor, the unobstructed, sort of glorious view, and only for a minute, and only when it's connecting two of the main galleries. And then lastly, the space that we call the Mediatheque is where all of the media projects that the museum curates are available on these screens. It's sort of an individual space of contemplation where we tipped the room down just enough that it edits out the horizon and simply frames the water itself. So again, sort of about looking the site and thinking about what goes on in a museum. Let me see, I'm just going to check my time. Okay. If you get bored, just, I guess somebody could start snoring. That would be a good sign. This is a competition that I like to show when thinking about looking, because I think we did a really sort of a nice job of sort of presenting sort of two ways of seeing. We didn't win this competition, but we're still very proud of the project. This is a museum, a private museum for an industrialist in Austria named Leonig. It's now open by the other architect. And it's in this cute little hamlet of Neuhaus. Picture postcard perfect Austria. And then it shows art like this. So Leonig's collection is post-war Austrian art, and if you didn't know, basically body art was developed out of post-war Austria, and included Nietzsche and I forget all the names of the artists, but often using blood, often using the body, and we found this sort of dichotomy of the site versus the stuff that was inside the museum irresistible. And so what we decided to do was flip the museum inside out and take all of the circulation that normally connects galleries, in middle, so that you are closest to your next gallery. It's a very efficient way to organize a museum. Flipped it outside so that every time you leave a gallery, you're confronted with this picture-perfect postcard, lush landscape. And the circuit then evolves around sort of this back and forth between landscape and gallery, art and nature, and it's sort of a forced sort of apprehension of the surroundings. And every time you come out of one of these galleries, looking at blood or people scraping their knees on the pavement of Vienna, and then you get this. We decided it make you a little cuckoo, so we decided to make it even more upsetting, and we decided to tip the entire building and lodge one corner of the building into the ground. Thus, when you exit into this landscape gallery, which is also a gallery, putting the landscape on exhibition, very much like the work, you're either slowly rising up or slowly descending, and when you finally get to the work of the Actionismus movement, you start penetrating into the earth, cutting the earth. Yes, well, direct metaphor, but sort of fun. So the glass walls form terrariums in the earth that you circulate down. The owners, this is just a little aside, the owners or the collector's house is that sort of manse up there to the right of the church. So when you enter the museum from the parking garage, which is below, your view is framed on his house directly. So that's that. And so here are just a couple images of circulating around this sort of landscape gallery. It's in a cornfield. We decided to let the cornfield remain as a cornfield. It's actually still an agricultural, would have been an agricultural field. And then penetrating the middle is a new public passage, which allows people to go right through the museum and over galleries and look into galleries and eventually be suspended over the Drow River, which you see in this image down below here. The offset and the tipping made each gallery exist at a different level, and we thought we would use that to best advantage, again, putting sort of visitors on display, potentially sort of upsetting the expected norms of gallery going. We put a hole in the between the ceiling and the floor to let some of the water or the atmosphere of the outside exist within the gallery as an element of the gallery. And then on the top of the roof, we made a light scupper system which allowed us to keep the cornfield on the green roof and concentrate the light with this series of phototropic scuppers that would point towards the sun or point away from the sun, depending on what kind of lighting conditions were out in the world. So essentially, we replanted the field with these light scuppers. Okay, this is a little interlude. Have a little sip of adult wine. So this is a project that we did for the Liverpool Biennial, 2 years ago, something like that. And we were given a public park to work in, and we decided to make a grove of trees, 3 of which behave badly and positioned themselves on these turntables. They're planted at slight angles so that as they move around, they kind of hiss. And I always like to think about pubs in Liverpool and these blokes coming out and seeing these trees moving after a late night. I never actually have witnessed them in person, so I sort of have that. Golly, this is not exactly what I thought was here, but I'll just talk about this really quickly. We were invited to the Venice Biennale, the Architecture Biennale 2 years ago, which takes place in the Cordery. It's a quarter-mile long, 500-year-old building in the military district of Venice. Beautiful, beautiful building with a canal on the side and an air conditioner. I thought that was like time, so you're done. Anyway, the original theme of the show was At Home in the Modern World, and it was sort of about the way technology has invaded, but also become an extension of our bodies and our lives, and so we were thinking about that. The theme changed a little bit in the end, but because we're so interested in the site and working with sites and very specific qualities of the site, we decided that we wanted to make an espresso bar in the middle of the Cordery. What better thing to do after walking 1/8 of a mile and seeing a million exhibits to stand up and have a little espresso made with canal water from Venice. So we started working with a company there in Venice who developed this sort of reverse osmosis purifying machine that would take the water out of the canals and actually make it completely drinkable. Can happen, and they use this technology in many parts of the world already to purify water. But we wanted to theatricize this process, so you see the sludgy water going in from the canal, and then tanks that's getting cleaner and cleaner, and then it goes to the Rentilio machine in the middle. We were going to, I don't know if you can see these drawings, but we were going to support The bar, completely from above, hung from the column, 500-year-old columns. They had no problem with us hanging this espresso machine. It was kind of amazing to me. That was, in fact, more like what it was going to look like. The thing they did have a problem with us doing was actually serving coffee out of Venetian canal water, and the mayor said if you serve a single cup of espresso with canal water, you're going to be thrown into jail. And for a while I thought that was really exciting, because then we go over the Bridge of Sighs, but that's long since been turned into a museum. Anyway, it turns out we had sort of teamed up with the wrong water purification company. Just a couple more projects, thinking about looking and seeing, and some of our work around the museum. We recently won a competition and are now in design development for a project on Copacabana Beach in Rio. It's called the Museum of Image and Sound, this project advances many of the formal and social areas of our inquiry that we started actually with I-beam and with ICA, into the nature of the surface and the democratic surface, thinking about Copacabana Beach as an incredibly democratic place that welcomes everybody in the city from every social strata. And only 2 blocks away are the favelas, or one favela. It's actually 2 blocks behind our site, on this incredibly vertical hill. It's sort of picturesque poverty. I mean, normally the hillsides are for the wealthy and the flatlands are for the poor. It's exactly the opposite in Rio. But those 2 conditions are the things that inspired the museum, the form of the museum. We're also interested in the extension of that democratic surface into the sidewalks of the Burley Marx affected, these gorgeous modernist sidewalks that become the image of the city. Like our work on the ICA, we thought, let's build the museum out of the city itself. What better thing to do for a museum that is going to showcase work of local artists and actors. So in principle, we've taken the Burley Marx sidewalk, folded it in upon itself, and stacked it, making it a ribbon that goes back and forth, alternately in folding gallery space and public space, programs that are accessible to the public: restaurant, bar, discotheque, which made me excited. And that's sort of the image of the building, with the exterior surface of the building folded up from the sidewalk, and completely accessible to the public without paying. And you can walk up to 6 floors to the top floor, which is an outdoor cinema. And you can see that the favela that I pictured before in the background, people are used to walking up great heights in the city. And to us, the building sort of encapsulates the geographic and social conditions of the city, the vertical and the horizontal democratic surface. It's a simple building, 4 galleries and a sort of meandering atrium space, an auditorium down below. That's it on its site. And there you see this sort of free access walkway on the exterior of the building. This is a view of the gallery on the inside, one of the galleries. They had to be darkened. There are a lot of media components of the galleries, and then the roof has this rooftop cinema. That's at night. So here again, we continue our thought about vision and how it relates to where we are, our proximity, and also to the sort of iconicity of a view. This is perhaps one of the most recognized images in the world, and Copacabana Beach. And again, potentially a distraction or potentially part of the collection of a museum. And we decided, again, like we did at the ICA, to turn the view into a curated experience of the site. So we divided the view up into these blocks, and have taken out of the view a pathway that represents your progression up the building through the galleries from the ground up to the top surface, from sidewalk to sky, and the building actually curates your vision of the site as you move up it through a sort of brise-soleil that works like a lenticular, and this is sort of demonstrating how this works. So the brise-soleil is yay thick with holes perforated into it. The cylinders of each hole are angled in such a way that they frame your view and focus your view, and that frame and focus shifts as you move up the building through the different galleries to where it takes you from sidewalk all the way up to the sky. Carmen Miranda's collection is part of the museum, which makes me really happy. And she was only 5'2", and she also wasn't Brazilian; she was Portuguese. But she moved there when she was young, and she was wholly adopted by Brazil. And we're interested in museography and the way to help tell the story of the artifacts, and also engage the viewer in a direct, visceral sort of experience about the artifact. So, I mean, this is a couple of years ago. There's been a lot of progress in the way that so there's Carmen Miranda's dress, and so there'd be a little video, and it was sort of a Pepper's ghost. So the light comes up behind, and what was a flat video image then becomes a real. And then you could just point your phone, and this is where there's been so many there have been so many advances in technology, and that your PDA can show augmented reality. I'm not going to claim that we developed this concept, but we were there along with it from the beginning, and just ways of using technology to help kind of make your experience richer and deliver more information to you, using building and its site and surroundings to contribute to your understanding of the material. So here's a series of photographs that are of Rio, and the thought being that you could there would be a projection on the floor, and you can find the photograph, and it would take you to a kind of lifetime version of that view, so through video or some form of photography. And here, because there is no mass transit in Rio, the traffic is horrendous. So we thought, well, let's have a cafe right by the front door, and we'll put all the traffic cams of Rio up to view, so you'll know when you can drive home safely, when your street clears up. Or you just sit there and keep drinking coffee. Anyway, this is a quick little video that just shows the museum being sort of generated out of the site. Show the Burley Mark sidewalk, sliced, pulled up, wraps back on itself. There's an auditorium which we make a little clear story slot down to, type music out, so as you're walking by, casual observers can experience what's happening down there. there's our zombies walking up the the stairs. And in the galleries themselves, we're working with the curator down there who's developing the museography with us. Very supportive of our approach towards letting the building help you see. So that's the brise-soleil there that controls your view. Little bar sort of midway up the stretch of stairs. And there's a restaurant at the very top. Destination is here. Finally giving back the full view. Reminiscing about how that happened in the ICA at the top of that building. And then the movie, outdoor movie. One of my favorite movies. I think this is the last project that I'm going to show you tonight. I do have more slides. If anybody wants to stay, they can show them more, but I think I'd end here. And sort of lastly, and this project is one that we think is really sort of wonderful, exuberant way for this institution to remake itself, to expand its ability to program without resorting to the kind of things that we sort of expect a lot of cultural institutions to do, and what we're excited about these institutions, which is to build new buildings. I mean, that's why we do architecture, so we can build new buildings. But here, the Hirshhorn, which is Gordon Bunshaft's beautiful, iconic donut-shaped building there on the right-hand side of the mall, which is the contemporary art version of the Smithsonian, occupies rarefied site, one of the most difficult sites actually, and one of the most regulated sites in America, and also one of the most closed buildings, sort of almost perfect, I guess, as a donut. Never actually had the proper kind of lobby or event space or sort of ancillary space that museums want and need to make themselves financially sustainable these days. Here's the courtyard in the middle of the building, and we were approached to think about ways to temporarily expand their programming ability and to provide event space for them, and we started thinking about inflate structures, which is not that unusual these days to see these kinds of things, but we thought that there was a really great opportunity with this building in particular to use the hull of the donut to help us make an inflate structure. So this is our permanent temporary installation that pops up through the hole of the Hirshhorn twice a year for 1 month at a time, and it oozes out underneath the edge as if it's a herniated disc or something, with clear plastic. That's going to be the cafe, and the interior space is quite ample and will allow for great large audiences to see performances. Will totally change for the 2 months of the year that it's up the appearance of the atrium from inside the building. It can have film festivals and program it with site-specific works of art or spectacular installations. And that's the way that's working. And this is actually being developed right now into a piece of temporary, permanent temporary architecture. Oh, there's a coda. So You know how I said we did the High Line? This talk is all about looking, and one of the things that has happened with the High Line is it's kind of turned back on itself. It's very much about looking 30 feet above the city grid, and it provides this rarefied space of seeing New York like you've never seen it before. It cuts through buildings. It's really beautiful and wonderful and magical, and we had nothing to do with that. That's just the way it was made. But it's engendering a whole new level of sort of interaction now, especially the Standard Hotel, which spans the High Line and has looking and being looked at. It's become quite a thing at the hotel, and in fact encouraged by the management, who shall remain nameless. On that, I think I'm going to call it quits. Thank you very much for not snoring. Oh, yeah, I'll take questions.
Oh, hi. Yeah. It's only got one floor, it's the ground floor. It's just covered to the ground floor, which is now open air.
Can be used as a place to hold events. So it doesn't have multiple floors in it.
No, it doesn't increase
the actual galleries in the donut. It just makes. Yeah, but anyway, you can ask David, Alan, who's working on that, if after the show. Tell him how much he can tell you how much it costs to inflate. If anybody wants to try that, a couple bottles of Viagra and it's done. Any other questions?
Yes.
So many of the earlier projects created a very clear distinction between natural vision and augmented reality, or artificial vision, and therefore engage a lot of the writings of Walter Benjamin. And I'm wondering if you could perhaps speak a little bit about how that's become a little bit more seamless in the recent projects and the way that the firm understands the distinction.
I think that all of the work has always been about mediated vision, and whether it's mediated through technology or through a window frame, I think we think that existing in the world you're always presented with a frame that changes the way we see things, and we're just trying to heighten that in ways that are specific to a project and specific to a site. So I think the objective hasn't changed that much. It's a lot easier sometimes to point out the difference between life and art when you're contained, when you're an art exhibit, or let's say a theater piece. You're already in a distracted and kind of you're different than life at that point. And so I think that as the work has become more architectural, sort of by definition, it's become less distinct, the way that it mediates your views. But I think that the work still works that way. The project still works that way.
Given the diversity of your work, do you find yourself doing project development and client work, or is there always conceptual things in the office that you then find avenues to execute, or talk about that?
I'm wondering exactly what that question is.
We have. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we luckily, we've been able to maintain
what we often call the money-losing department at the office, and David, who's sitting over here, is the head of that money-losing department. But he has a lot of fun, and was one of the major contributors, along with Alana from our office, to the wine show. We pour money back into the money-losing department from our money barely earning department, because we want to maintain a research arm in the studio. A lot of the projects are self-initiated, but a lot of them are problems that come to us because we are known to be people who like to deal with problems. And if we aren't given a problem, we like to make problems. That's sort of what we do. We've been lucky in that regard that we've been able to maintain the two arms of the practice. But it hasn't been easy, I guess. Certainly not cheap. And sometimes work from one side sort of flows into the other, and we look for those opportunities, but we don't force them. So we don't matchmake between those two sides of the office.
Could you talk about the wine show a bit, or maybe connect some of these ideas to what's the wine thing that's happening?
right.
What I would say about that is, rather than me talking about it, that you guys should all go. And again, it gives you an opportunity to sample some of your local produce. The wine show it continues in a line of investigation about nature, for one thing, and sort of the transformation or the embodiment of many issues and ideas and concepts of society in one little thing, which was sort of what the lawn was about. So I think it's very much in keeping with some of our explorations, but I would encourage everybody to go and see it.
You talked a little bit about how you might form an idea for a building within the office. Like at the initial stage, you could go like an exploding nebula or something in all directions, somehow have to gather something in.
It is sort of different on every project, but it's also sort of the same on every project. So the way that we work is very similar, so that gives us a little bit of grounding when we start. And I think if you were looking at the projects, there are thematics and even formal strategies that find their way from project to project, jumping to the next one. And it's mostly because there's some themes to the work we're interested in continuing to explore. Vision being one of the primary themes, but I mean, that's a big question. It's sort of the question of creativity in general. It's like, well, how does anybody come up with their ideas? Yes, it could go a lot of different ways, but there is a sort of body of work and a sort of trajectory of exploration that we start with, and it's a starting point. Then we sort of ladle new stuff on it and see where it goes. We're really sort of old-fashioned that way. Yeah.
Spaces that you haven't been asked yet to explore, but things that you're interested in, things that you would like to have in.
You mean building types?
Is that what that means?
Yes, building or performance spaces or things in the vein of what you've shown, but maybe in certain problem areas that just people haven't approached before yet, but they're things of interest.
We're doing something I'm really interested in personally, which is actually happening, is we're doing a factory in China, and I find that to be pretty interesting because it's not a museum. It's actually at the root of sort of the economy, and I think a lot of architects would be scared of that. Sweatshop, and where 4,000 workers live. But for me, that was a really interesting one, and we didn't seek that out. It came to us, but we embraced it as as a challenge, and so that's sort of interesting. And along those lines, I think housing is something that we've done a little work in, but I think there's a lot there, and so much of our and Liz and Rick's work was about domesticity and issues of the family, and those ideas are still really potent and interesting to us. So I think those housing, mass housing, that's the right word, as well as individual single-family houses, pretty interesting territory.
So you're interested in visibility and vision, and also the augmentation of vision, especially through technology.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would argue that we live in an overly abundant visual society today, and that this augmentation of vision is actually becoming problematic, and it's numbing our sensibility to the visible. And I was wondering where you stand on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we use media less now, I guess, but we only see what we see. We can't have multiple layers of vision at the same time. So I think there's an increase of amount of images, but there's not an increase of seeing. You know what I'm saying? So I think that there's always a place to all of this new stuff provides us more fodder to react against, and I wouldn't say that we're going to change our approach, but I think that it offers different media and different tools to use in order to make fresh work. Sort of deals with the conditions that we have right now. Yeah, I mean, we're bombarded with images, but every time your eye is open, you're seeing an image, whether it's the same image or a whole bunch of other different images. So it's, I don't know, I'm bullshitting. Okay, any more questions? I have a feeling there might be some wine after this. No. Oh, perfect. Yes.
For John. Can you tell us anything about the Berkeley Art Museum?
The Berkeley Art Museum is going to be amazing. We are, I believe, getting very close to showing the design. It's a scaled back version from the Ito Museum. It's renovation and addition. As such, it's very sartorial. It's very precise and about sort of clothing in a way. Things that are inserted, things that grow out of the insertions. It's going to be a really nice little project, and very much a new sort of. We're working in the vein of some of our other projects in that it's giving over to the city the stuff that's inside the museum itself. So it's a very generous, we hope, building.
Last one. Our studio right now is based right off the High Line.
Yeah.
And you ended right before the High Line portion of your talk. And so I was just wondering. Yeah. Just we're really interested in how there's new program being brought into the city by the High Line, and how the buildings being built around it are really bringing the High Line into them, and how that's incorporating and creating a new type of urbanism and typology, exactly. Thank you.
And what do you want me to say about that?
I'm just interested, you ended right then, and so I was just wondering if you had anything to speak about the High Line really fast without continuing the talk too long.
No, I mean, you know,
It's a cool space that's engendered a lot. It's breathed a new life into New York City urbanism, and I think there's been a lot of fresh thinking that's been engendered by the High Line and its arrival. There's also been a lot of cruising that's happened because it's a sexy space. Okay, on that note, thank you.